All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Board of Education Forum, sponsored by the Newtown PTA and PTSAs. My name is Crystal Anstead, and I'm delighted to be your moderator this evening. We are thrilled to have these candidates tonight for this event, and our goal is to help the community familiarize yourselves with the candidates and where they stand on the important issues that we're going to be discussing this evening. A quick word on the forum for this evening. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes. Everyone will be given an opportunity to answer each of the questions. We'll be starting with an opening and closing statement from each candidate. And then as we go through the questions, each candidate will also be given a warning signal as your time is approaching the end. Okay? We hope to have time at the end for candidate questions, for audience questions, but we also appreciate that it is a school night and we're going to do our best to keep this program running on time. So with that, I will begin by introducing our candidates. Going from my left, Shannon Tomai, Brendan Coakley, Chris Gilson, Todd Higgins, my apologies, Chris Gilson. Then we have Allison Platt and Bruce Walzak. Would you like to begin with your opening statement?
Sure, I'd love to. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here tonight and see so many familiar faces and many new ones. My name is Shannon Tomai, and I am currently serving on the Board of Ed as a Republican, and I'm seeking election for 2 years in this coming cycle. I joined the Board of Ed because I believe very deeply in giving back to the community and trying to make things better everywhere you can. And because I have 2 little girls in the Newtown Public School District, and I have a very vested interest personally in making sure that we deliver the best education possible for all of our children. My goals are really academic excellence and closing the performance gap between all of our students. I know that we have some very economically challenged students in this district and other children who are dealing with special education needs, and we really need to do a better job of making sure that they can have the same opportunities and access to education and goals and move on to other goals in their lives. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shannon. Brennan?
Thank you, Crystal. My name is Brendan Coakley, running as a Republican for the Board of Education. I'm a homegrown Newtown product. I grew up, obviously, in Newtown. My parents moved here in 1991. Went to Hawley Elementary School, middle school, and graduated in 2005 from the high school. After attending Penn State, my wife and I met each other there. We settled in Delaware for a bit and had the opportunity to relocate back home to Newtown. After selecting what town we want to live in, it was an easy choice for me because of the experience I had growing up, the opportunities I had growing up, and just the overall nostalgic feeling I have about my town. And now that I have a child of my own, a 10-month-old, and looking at being on the Board of Education in a 4-year term, when that time is up, my son will begin kindergarten. So why I'm running for the Board of Education, first and foremost, I feel that public service is a great duty that you have the opportunity to do. You should take advantage of that. Being an advocate for my child, as well as every other child in this town, to experience all the opportunities that they deserve and make sure that we're doing everything we can in our power to uncover those solutions to them if they're not yet accessible. And having that open form of communication where everyone can be on the same team and understanding that the end goal is to provide simply the opportunity for everyone to achieve their full success. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Tom?
Thank you, and thank you to the Newtown PTA, to my fellow candidates, and to all of you. Again, my name is Todd Higgins. I, like Shannon, joined the board earlier this year. I was appointed, and now I'm a candidate for the remainder of the term, which is 2 years. I'm a lawyer. I'm a father of 6 children. I've lived in Newtown since 2015. I look forward tonight to talking about the issues that all of us care about. You all have bios that are in front of you for the candidates, and for those of you that don't know me, I hope tonight that you'll be able to see a little bit about what my background is and my experience. But really what I want to start from is to give you a little bit of perspective on why I'm here and why it is that I feel as strongly as I do about education and the mission of really bringing about the best that we can for our district. For me, education is personal. Some of you know my backstory, but I grew up in a very difficult set of circumstances. I left school when I was 14 years old. And for a lot of people who grew up like I did, that was the end of their journey when it came to education. But for me, that was just the beginning. I had the good fortune of watching my mom, who really had not a thing in this world, but she did have one thing, and that was a passion for learning. I watched her go back to school, get a GED, graduate from college. I watched her disabled, go on to get a master's in social work. I watched her spend her last days on this earth studying, getting a second master's in library studies. From that, I really began to understand the power of what education means and the power that it has to change lives. So for me, it's personal because it changed my life. And I have spent the last 20 years in all of the things that I've done trying to pay it forward. So that's why I'm here now. That's what this is about for me. That's why I care as much as I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Chris?
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Gilson. I have 2 kids in the school system, a daughter who's a senior and a son who's in 8th grade. And I'm running for the Board of Ed, largely because of them. So I taught community college for 6 years while I was getting my PhD in Atlanta, Georgia, at Emory University. I was teaching community college originally to pay for daycare, but after getting comfortable in the classroom, I loved teaching. When I finished my PhD in transplant immunology, I was able to transfer into a 3-year teaching position in the biology department at Emory. Teaching salaries will only get you so far. I had 2 kids, student loans to pay back. So I moved back to Connecticut, where I'm from, and worked at BOE where I did work on Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and IBD for 5 years. I now do cancer research in New Haven at a smaller biotech company. So my kids have gotten older. My daughter just got her license, which is frightening. And she works as a cashier at Caroluzzi's. They're getting to be more independent. And I wanted to find a way to get back into education. I looked into getting an adjunct teaching position at WestCon, but that would be a tremendous amount of time and a lot of travel. And honestly, when the book ban situation came up for the Board of Ed, that originally got me interested. I started going to meetings. I spoke at one of the public participation meetings just to share my feelings on that. And I wanted to get involved and I wanted to help. I've mentored undergraduates, I've mentored pre-med students, I've developed courses of my own at the college level. I've won awards for large lecture teaching, I've served on committees, I've managed academic budgets that are really tight, and I've managed large industry budgets, which can be equally as difficult to do. I come with experience in academics, teaching, and industry, and I feel like I could bring something to the Board of Ed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Allison?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Allison Plant. I've been on the Board of Education for the past year. I'm practically running for a full term. Thanks to the PTAs for hosting this event, and to all of you for taking time out of your night to come listen. My husband and I moved to Newtown 13 years ago. We have 3 small kids, 2 who attend middle gate, and 1 who will start kindergarten there next year. By day, I work in financial services, and at night, like many of you, I'm at the soccer fields, at the gymnastics gym, the daycare pickup line, or with my Girl Scout troop. I've served at the Board of Ed for the past year, having filled a vacancy, and it's been a very busy year. I chair the Facilities, Finance, and CIP Subcommittee, as well as the DEI Subcommittee. I'm also on the Board of Directors of EdAdvance, which is an organization that serves Newtown schools, providing after-school care and transportation for special education. Being on the Board of Education is a great privilege. It's also a great responsibility. I believe our schools need to be places of academic excellence, critical thinking, social and emotional learning. They need to be welcoming and diverse communities. Our school buildings must be maintained such that they can provide excellent physical conditions for all of this learning to occur. I'm running for re-election motivated by the same thing that motivated me to apply for the vacancy last year, which is that serving on the Board of Ed is ultimately serving our children. I think there's no higher purpose than that in our town. I believe I've brought a calm, practical, and collaborative perspective to the board, and with all the benefit of the learning and the experience I've gained over the past year, I think I hope to continue that in the next term. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Allison. And Bruce?
I'm Bruce Walzak. I'm the senior here in Burlington. I've lived in Newtown for 33 years this time. I've lived here before. I came to Newtown for two reasons. The character of the community, but also the balance of the community. I grew up in New Canaan and Westport and didn't want to raise my kids in an environment that seemed not real, not reflective of what the United States is. Newtown may not be exactly reflective either, but it's a lot realer than most places. I've dedicated my 33 years in town to community service. It's in my blood. I started out as a social worker in Oklahoma, working in low-income Black and Indian communities, and I carried that with me through my entire career. My involvement in town and the skill set that I bring to it is what's driven me to the Board of Ed. I was elected to the Police Commission. I was on 2 terms now on the Economic Development Commission. I was president of the Family Counseling Center. I'm president of the Newtown Lions Club. It's in my blood to give back. I think what I can contribute to the board is a broad range of skills. My business career for 33 years and my involvement with the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And we'll start with you, Bruce, for our first question, which is, if, senior privilege, if elected, how would you address the challenges of school funding and resource allocation to ensure opportunities for all students? You have 2 minutes, please.
It's an interesting question, and thank you. Budget issues are always big here in town. It's interesting to see where we stand on the state level. We actually are 96 out of 190 schools in Connecticut, and yet we're ranked in the state of Connecticut in the top 20% consistently. And the goal of our budget is to make sure that the taxpayers get their money's worth and that kids get an excellent education. I'm pleased that over the last 10 or 12 years, every budget has passed, which tells me that the residents and the voters feel they're getting great value for the dollars that we're spending. And that would be my focus when it comes to budget time, is that we fund all our programs, the sports, the arts programs, the academic programs, that we don't leave any of the kids out, just in the search for maybe some numerical ratings that pop up. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison?
It sure does, yeah.
Let the talk over.
So I'm a firm believer in the necessity of prioritization. I think I wrote one of the candidate profiles that I have to do that. One of the things I'm constantly thinking about is that you can have anything you want, but not everything you want, which implies that you have to make choices about where to spend our finite budget dollars. I'm also a firm believer that we should be spending our budget dollars as close to the classroom as possible, because that's ultimately where the learning occurs. So that implies teaching, learning, staffing. I think that's where we need to put our money. And of course, there are other things that are must-haves as well. We need to maintain our buildings and things like that. But the first thing I'm thinking about when looking at a budget is, are we using as many of those dollars as possible as close to the children as possible?
Thank you. Chris?
So I'm a science nerd. So if I'm looking for results, I want to monitor the data and see how that correlates with the results. Figuring out whether our teaching methods in the classroom and what we're doing in the classroom is leading to learning gains from what I've learned from reaching out to Allison, my sister who's a PhD educator, is really, really difficult. And there's a whole lot of research and science dedicated to trying to figure out whether what we're doing in the classroom is really making a difference. The state provides a lot of metrics for that. And recently there was a presentation at the board for how our education is going post-COVID, addressing the gap, and where there's things that need to be filled and where we're doing really well. So I agree with Allison that we need to be smart about where we're putting our money. And it can't just be, it feels good to go here, it feels good to go there. I would really like to see the board dive into more data and be able to make decisions on where we put our money based on what's going to make the most difference. I have a couple of other things. I wish we could get more bus drivers. As a parent, you probably got the calls in the last couple of years. Our kids in the auditorium, you need to come pick them up. This is not on bus drivers. I would love to see if we can figure that out. And then this ongoing issue with our facilities. I know some of the teachers that teach at the middle school. My son is there, and 3 times this year they had to cancel school or leave early because it was too hot. Newtown wants to strive to be excellent in education. I think we should also be excellent in our facilities.
Thank you, Chris. Todd?
Thank you. And I agree with Chris. It does start from data, but really the question is budget challenges. And budget challenges starts, in my view, with a lack of transparency, particularly from the point of view of a parent or a taxpayer in Newtown that's trying to understand what is the value that we're getting. And what my work has been about on the board so far is really bringing the transparency to the process, to be able to understand what are we spending the money on, where are we level setting around where we are today, where are we level setting around where we're trying to get, and what are the metrics that we're using to assess our progress. If we want to address the budget challenges, really what that comes down to is persuading our fellow citizens that the investments that we make today and the investments that we have to make tomorrow are worth it, that they're going to pay off. So from my perspective, the job of the Board of Education in the first instance is to be able to make that case. And you cannot make that case without transparency in the process. You can't make that case without data to be able to say to Newtown, look, here's where we are. The performance gap between our lowest and highest performing students is X. If we want to move the needle on that performance, we're going to have to invest dollars. Here's where we are on post-secondary readiness. If we want to move the needle on that, here's how we do it. Concrete objectives, concrete strategies, concrete correlation to budget spend. If the Board of Education puts that information together and does it in a transparent way, then it becomes possible to come to our fellow residents, to our community and say, look, let's make the investment. And this is not going to be just throwing money away. This is investment that's tied to specific strategies about how to make us better. That's the work that the board needs to do.
Thank you, Todd. Brennan?
Thank you. So, in my view, I view budget like you would view any company. So you have to be willing to take the time to not only invest in your people, but invest in your facilities. If you don't do that, you're going to be facing a problem that is a financial burden if there's not a plan put in place. Upkeep of facilities is paramount. As taxpayers, as parents of our students, we should be proud and that our facilities are held to the regard that they are, as far as proper maintenance, discretionary spending is being spent wisely. Also, I think something to consider is utilization of space in our buildings. Understanding if maybe we could have opportunities to tap into value in our facilities that we may not be utilizing if there is available space. Something from a budget standpoint, from teachers and teachers' aides, paraprofessionals. My mother was a paraprofessional for the better part of a decade, and she was tasked with being one-on-one with behavioral students. And a few years ago, when the budget was coming, it was time for the budget to be brought up, her role was unfortunately cut because there wasn't enough discretionary spend left in that particular school's budget. And unfortunately, the teacher, what does that say to the teacher that she's helping out with, that we don't have enough budget to help me out, and now that, no discredit to the behavioral child, but now they're faced with needing to keep up with the class and keep up with that student that otherwise was falling behind.
Thank you, Brennan. Shannon?
Thank you. Obviously, budgeting is all about setting priorities, right? And we have a lot of different competing priorities on a finite budget in this town. Facilities are a huge issue right now with the HVAC system at the middle school and some other classrooms that are closed because they're too hot. We are losing teachers because we're not paying as much as some of the surrounding towns are. So we have a large constraint on the budget in that manner. But the most important way to use our budget is for our children in the classroom. And we really need to come together and find a way to focus in that direction, because our current budget, 80% of it is spent on contractual obligations to salaries. And another 15 to 16% is spent on special education, which obviously is super important. But that number is expected to rise. So if we're practical about what the discretionary numbers are, they're very, very small. And with those dollars, it is where all the fun stuff comes in and all the extras for their kids. Quite honestly, without the PTAs and all the fundraising they're doing, we wouldn't have any of those extra programs based on our budget. So it is something that we need to focus on and figure out what our priorities are together, and then have a goal of getting there. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. And we'll start with you for our next question,
Okay.
which is, it is well known that there is a statewide teacher shortage. How would you work to attract, hire, and retain quality teachers to our district?
That's a great question, especially coming off of this issue. We need to attract teachers with competitive salaries, obviously, and we also need to attract teachers by letting them know that we support them and that we're there for them. Teaching is probably one of the hardest jobs anybody could ever do, and it's probably a calling for most. But they need to feel heard and supported in their roles. And so I think we need to have a more open conversation with teachers and paras in the classrooms and ask them what they need to feel supported in their roles. I think that we need to support professional development for those teachers who might want to move on to administrative roles or even other aspects of their career. Obviously, we'd all like to see our teachers stay for the tenure of their career so that they develop relationships and become part of our community for a long time. But we should be supporting all aspects of their life and be there for them. I also think that we need to focus on what we are paying paras in our district. That is a very low hourly rate, and those beautiful individuals help children with special needs and stay with them all day long, and try to get them to participate and get the education that they deserve. They're making less than they should, and we really should focus on making sure that they feel supported as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Brennan?
So we have to remember, teachers, just like every single one of us here, are people at the end of the day. And in your own line of work, if you're evaluating where you are year in and year out, and particularly if you're not where you want to be for whatever the reason it might be, whether it's you don't feel valued, you don't feel appreciated, you don't feel heard in your workplace, who could fault you for making a decision to look somewhere else? I feel that Newtown should be the mecca of schools in Connecticut. It should be the envy of Connecticut, as other school districts that emulate and follow. As far as having those opportunities for teachers, for students, but for teachers with career growth opportunities, to echo Shannon, career development. You have to invest in your team. You have to invest in your teachers in order for them to feel that warm and cozy, that they're wanted, they're respected, they're heard. And it will come out in their work, and it will reflect on our students. And at the end of the day, I think that's what we all want. Teachers have the same stresses as we all do, and I think that we have to put value in our teachers, our administration, and give them every opportunity and every reason to not ever want to leave Newtown, because we are giving them every single solution that they ask for. And if we're not, we're having that conversation to bring it to light and figuring out a way to best move forward on providing that solution.
Thank you, Brennan. Todd?
Thank you. And I agree with a lot of what both Shannon and Lynn said. We have to be willing to mean it when we say that we want to listen to the stakeholders in our school. Right? So that's parents, so that's administrators, so that's teachers. We need to be able to listen and mean it when we say it. And if teachers are not coming and they're not staying, we have to listen as to why. And here's a spoiler alert. We need to be investing. We need to be investing in our people, because this is the capital of a school system is its people, and there is no more important part of that equation than the teachers. And if we're not serious about our commitment to the teachers, and we're not making good on that commitment each and every day, then don't be surprised that we're facing shortages, that teachers are not thrilled with their work environment, that they're looking for other opportunities. Some of them are leaving the profession. Some of them are going to other school districts. So if we want to turn that around and we really mean it, when we say that, it starts with listening. And after we're done listening, it starts with investing. And that's why I come back to the budget question and the transparency, because ultimately we're going to have to agree as a community that these are investments worth making. I know they are, I believe they are, but it's up to the Board of Education ultimately to make that case. It's up to us to be able to marshal the facts, to marshal the data, and then be able to come to our community and say, look, this is where our teachers are. This is what they need to be successful. Is it an investment that you're willing to support? I know it's an investment that I'm willing to support. We still have to do the work of telling our community why that matters, showing them that it is worth the investment. I know it is.
Thank you, Todd. Chris?
We're not supposed to agree with the other side. And I completely agree with having the courage to invest. And I know what this looks like. My daughter has a buddy down the road. Both of her parents drive to New York every day to teach because they can't afford to live in Newtown and teach in Newtown. On top of that, they have a kid who's 6 years old. The kid has to drive with them to New York to go to school during the week. That's tough. I know what it's like to be wanting to be a teacher but not affording to keep doing it. So I really appreciate the words about investing and the courage to do that in our teachers. What can we do besides what's already been said? I hear teachers say, I love my students. One of my neighbors is a teacher. She says that part of her job she loves is the kids that are there. So how do we encourage the environment in our schools to be populated with students that teachers say, I love these kids? There's a lot of things that the school is doing. The superintendent has a lot of policies that make kids feel safe, that make kids feel included in the community, that make them feel happy to be who they are. We can support our teachers too by supporting our students and making them people that our teachers want to be around every day.
Spoiler alert, I agree with both of you on that. And look, I think great teachers want to come to great districts. And so a lot of the stuff we've already talked about tonight also feeds into that. If we can make the district, continue to keep the district great, then teachers will flock here. And I would also expand not just teachers, but paraprofessionals, behavior techs, bus drivers, anyone who contributes to the school community, I think, there's a labor shortage across the board, it's not just teachers, and so we need to be thinking about all those different groups. I think one thing, based on my experience in the last year, you can't just change contracts overnight, right? We have long-term contracts in place with all these groups. But when they do come up, I think what we need to do is continue to kick the tires hard on them, look at how we stack up against other districts, make sure that we're competitive. You know, if you live in Newtown, it's just as easy to drive to Brookfield and drive to Bethel. So we need to make sure that we're competitive against those surrounding towns. I think as well, to Todd's point earlier about listening to the staff, we do climate and culture surveys. We just got those results earlier this year. And what we hear from the staff is that they want strong administrators who are great leaders. They want professional development. In Newtown, we're very lucky to have a very rigorous program of professional development across the board. The teachers want inclusive and hospitable workplaces, just like we all want in our workplaces, right? And so I think just as important as looking at hard things like contracts, it's looking at climate and culture to figure out how can we make these schools places that the teachers want to be in, the kids want to be in, and that we're proud of. And I think to the extent that we can continue to ensure that we have great dialogue between Board of Education, the superintendent, the administrators, and all of these bargaining units, I think that's the only way to engage with each other, because needs change over time too. So we need to make sure that we don't just have a static understanding of what teachers or paras want. We have an open dialogue so we can be responsive to evolving needs.
Thank you, Allison. Bruce?
Wow. Yeah, of course, salaries play a big role in it. And I'm not going to tell an audience sitting here, parent-teacher organization, that that's not going to happen. But it's not going to happen. The best companies in the U.S. are not the best paying companies. The best companies in the U.S. are places that people like to work at. They talk about the culture, why they like to go to work every day. We need to support that. They don't need to put report cards up every day on the teachers and the staff to say you're not making this data point and you're not making that data point. We need to allow them to do their job with smart guidance from us and a policy and a direction that they know what the road is that they're going down. But to give them the freedom to do their job without picking up the paper every morning and finding some brouhaha going on that says, I don't want to go work there. I don't want to go run the school system there. I want to go to a school system where the community is supporting it and supporting my desires in teaching, understanding that there are goals and objectives that we have to meet when we do that.
Thank you. For our third question, we're going to start in the middle and work our way around. And then our last round, we'll go the other way. So, Chris, I'm going to start with you. As a board member, in light of the political tone in this nation, how will you keep your decisions to the best interest of the students and staff members instead of focusing on party affiliations?
Yeah. So our kids aren't allowed to vote until they're 18. So we shouldn't be pushing one side or the other in our schools. I've never been involved in politics before. This is my first time. I asked my kids if I'm a politician, and they kind of go, but I think things like this should happen. Somebody should come up with a really good idea and say, this can help our kids. And then somebody on the other side should say, that's a great idea. Let's make that work. Especially for the Board of Education, it shouldn't be a partisan, a political thing. These kids can't vote until they're 18. So our job as the Board of Education is to help support our staff, help support our teachers to make them the best critical thinkers that they can be. Fill their heads with the knowledge and the ability to think so that they can go off and make their own decisions in what's best for their lives.
Thank you, Chris. Allison?
Sure. What I always tell my kids is that actions speak louder than words, and so what I would hope is that don't judge me by what I say tonight, but judge me by how I've been as a board member for the past year. And I think I've consistently tried to work across the aisle and look, on the Board of Education, there's a lot of work to do, and so we need everyone to pitch in and everyone to do a lot of important work. And so it's not as though you can just work with the people who are on your team, right? It's a 7-person board. That's how we've operated. That's how I would want to continue to operate. And I think when a Board of Education is operating best, it is a nonpartisan body. I think we're all there for the kids. that's not a political thing. And I think so long as anyone can stay anchored to that and remember that we're all there with the best intentions, then I think that's the only way to.
Thank you, Allison. Bruce?
Well, I'm an independent. Anyone not know that? I've been a registered independent now for about 12 or 15 years. Fits right, it feels right. I don't have to take the party line or think that I have to take the party line to make decisions on issues. I think national politics has absolutely no role in the school system. We belong on the board and here in town to focus on our local issues and focus on our students. I can play a role where it's not an issue for me to cross over to different sides of the aisle. I'm in the middle, and I can be unpredictable that way. People can expect me to take a position this way on one thing, and I wind up not, because I'm listening to the facts and the needs of the students, and maybe it just doesn't quite fit in that other mold. And so I'm going to be the outcaster, I guess. I'm going to be the one that you can't necessarily predict which way I'm going to fall on an issue. And I think that'll be useful in creating critical thinking on the board and pushing everyone to look at all sides of it, not just the data, maybe how good our school band is. Not good. There's a lot of things that are coming with this equation, and I think I can bring them to the table.
Thank you, Bruce. Shannon?
Yeah, my opinion is that national politics has no place in the Board of Education in Newtown. I have worked with both sides of the aisle on the board since I joined, and I've seen almost zero partisanship. I think we have a lot of critical thinkers on the board who will take a look at what the issues are, communicate with each other, discuss what the different sides might think. And as long as we are all working towards the best interest of our children and making sure that people have equal opportunities and we're providing the best education we possibly can in this town for those babies, our job is done. So, thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Brennan?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, just to echo everyone's sentiment so far, yeah, even though we come from different political ways of thinking, be it conservative, be it independent, be it Democrat, at the end of the day, I can echo that. National politics has no place when it comes to our children. Our children are the most important thing. It's the Board of Education, the Board of America. That would be a totally different topic conversation tonight. But no, with keeping that in mind, being mature enough to have those conversations and hearing both sides if there is a difference of opinion and coming to a conclusion that we can all agree on. Yes, that makes the most sense with the end game of is this in the best interest of our children, plain and simple. And I think that would make most decisions that would take place pretty easy and pretty comfortable to agree on at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Brennan. Todd?
People have different beliefs. People have different ways of seeing the world, and that's okay. In fact, I think one of the things that we need to do better is to be serious when we talk about inclusivity and really allowing differing perspectives to flourish in an honest way. So it's not about partisanship. It's not even about politics. It's really about bipartisanship. It's about the ability to actually work together. And I think Allison said something really important. When you are looking at a candidate, don't judge them by what they said. Judge them by what they do. And I agree. My time on the board in the last 5 months, what I have seen is countless instances of bipartisanship. And my own role in that, when I came onto the board, it was in the aftermath of the book challenge, the division, the discord, the real breakdown in really respect. And I spent the summer working quietly and hard on a rational and balanced material selection policy. Ultimately, the board came together, it did its work, and that policy was adopted unanimously by the entire board. So in 5 months' time, we went from a position of really paralysis on an issue to a unanimous board. In that same time, we've talked about budget transparency, we've talked about academic performance, we've talked about issue after issue after issue, and we've done so honestly, we've done so respectfully, and that's what bipartisanship looks like. That's what it looks like to start doing the work of solving hard problems.
Thank you, Todd. And I'm going to start with you for our final question, which you actually just segued into quite nicely. What is your approach to dealing with discussions about potentially difficult topics, such as race, religion, or sexual orientation?
You know, I've said it again and again. It really starts with intellectual honesty. And if you look for no other characteristic in the people who you permit, who give them the honor of serving you, look for intellectual honesty. Who's going to be willing to say things for what they are, objectively, evidence-based, respectfully, but be willing to say it. Don't shy away from the challenges. We have to be willing as a community to talk openly, to talk honestly, even where we disagree. So building a culture that allows us intellectual honesty. Look, I have said throughout my time on the board, we need to look at academic performance. I have said we need to look at the performance gap, particularly the performance gap between our lower income families and everyone else. That is the largest gap. That is a gap that is, to me, unconscionable. It's also a gap that if we were to close it, we would in the process elevate the overall academic performance of our school. When I have said those things, some have said that that constitutes somehow bashing the schools, that that constitutes not being supportive. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am dedicated with every ounce of my body to doing everything I can to make the schools as great as they can possibly be. That starts with intellectual honesty, and that is true regardless of the issue. In fact, the more difficult the issue, the more controversy that we've experienced about it, the more important that intellectual honesty is to beginning a true discussion. And it's that true discussion that leads to understanding, and it's that understanding that actually empowers us to take action. That's what my time on the board has been about. That's what I'm committed to do, and with me, that is what you're going to get. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. Brennan?
Yeah, thank you. So to echo Todd, I think it's important to have, the ability to have those difficult conversations, with your family, with your friends, and have open and honest discussions about, how do you handle a certain situation with your kids? What are you telling them about X, Y, and Z? I think the biggest thing you can do to a young person is to instill in them self-confidence at a very early age. Because with self-confidence, that only grows as that child becomes more mature. They're able to stand up for themselves, they're able to advocate for themselves, they're able to think critically, and that will flourish and grow as they're introduced into more and more public settings, be it kindergarten, be it elementary school, middle school, and so on. I'm a big sports guy, so I feel like sports is the biggest leveler of all backgrounds on dynamics. I grew up playing all sports, but specifically AAU basketball. Being around kids from different backgrounds, you learn very quickly that not everyone is similar to you as far as what your experience is at home maybe. But being on the court, none of that matters because you're all working towards the same thing. Same thing at Penn State. You have 120 guys on the team from all over the country, even internationally, You have kids that come from families that are extremely well off, and to the other side of the coin. You have those conversations in the locker room, and you get that perspective, and as a community in Newtown, we have to be willing to open our eyes and ears to understand that, yes, we're a community, but we're part of a collection of everyone coming from a different background. So,
Thank you, Brennan. Shannon?
So I really liked what Todd said about being intellectually honest. I think when we are talking about hard topics or topics that people take very hard lines on, I think the most important place to come from is a place of your own honesty. I think, at least from my perspective and from what I've seen from my colleague, Mr. Higgins, we do value autonomy and equality and equal access for everybody. And part of autonomy, obviously, is about somebody's rights to choose what they need to do for their own self-determination and to be themselves. And I welcome that and want everyone to feel safe and comfortable in our schools. I think we also need to pay attention to what parents need to feel safe and comfortable when they entrust their children to the school district. So there are a lot of difficult conversations to be had, and as long as we are all respectful and open and we'll spend the time understanding the other side, I'm sure that we can come to some sort of some compromise or consensus to make sure that our children's rights are met and that the parents feel comfortable with their children in our school district.
Thank you, Shannon. Bruce?
Yeah. I was glad the topic of diversity came up. I would have been surprised if it hasn't. But I think we need to redefine the term. Right now it's, I think, got some political connotations nationwide attached to it. To me, it's different. It deals with teaching the kids or helping them learn respect. But we've got tall kids and short kids, and we've got heavy kids and thin kids. We've got kids that have stutters. We have kids that just are interested in art. We need to build up, as it was said, the confidence in those positions and not force them to go to a different direction. My son was reasonably good in school, and we had the family discussion about college. And my wife and I at the time looked at each other and we said, you know what, Ian really wants to be an artist. Now, coming out of the corporate world, to admit that my son didn't want to go to Dartmouth or Colgate, where I went to, but to go to an art school. And we said, if he doesn't get the chance now, he'll never have the chance to find out how good he is in art and to fill his objective. So we sent him to Pale College over in New Haven. He graduated top of his class. He probably was in the middle of his class in academics. So I think we need to broaden the word of diversity to make sure that we're looking at all the kids, making sure they all feel comfortable in their own skin. They don't get bullied, they don't get picked on, they respect each other, and they learn to appreciate what the other kids bring to them. It's about the kids.
Thank you, Bruce. Allison?
I fully agree with what you said. I chair our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee on the board. And in addition to all the great work that we've done on that committee over the last year, what we've also done in that committee, which is a group of members of both parties, we've had some really vulnerable conversations. We built trust among that group to establish a foundation of how do we talk about these difficult topics as a board. And I'm really proud of that. And I think it's coming from a place of honesty from the board members, of openness, and frankly, humility. Having the humility to know that we all have our own perspectives and biases, and we can only see the world through our own eyes, but not others. And so how do we figure out how to put ourselves in other shoes and create environments that are open and inclusive for them? And I think as a board member, one of our most important jobs is to listen. Listen to our staff, listen to our students, listen to our parents, and to listen to those populations that are marginalized, and to figure out how we can make our environments more inclusive for them. one of my proudest moments on the board was when we were in the middle of book challenges, and for all of the ugliness that brought about, that also brought some amazing stuff where we had a lot of our students come to our meetings and talk to us and tell us about their experiences in schools and the ways that they were struggling, the ways that we could help them. And again, amidst all that ugliness, I think I've never been so proud to be serving them and to motivated to figure out how we can most make them feel welcomed and make our school environments places where they feel emotionally safe and where they can be ready to learn, they can be ready to achieve academically.
Thank you, Allison. Chris?
Yeah, I just want to say I really appreciate the work that the board has done to try to maintain an environment that our kids feel safe and welcome, included in. It's something to strive for, and you can see that on our website, for the superintendent's statement on TEI and CL. And it takes work, and you have to work at it. When I was a kid, I was a skinny, nerdy little kid, and I didn't deal with anxiety very well. I had social anxiety, I was afraid a lot, and it made it really hard to learn in class. Anyone that's seen their kids come home stressed, anxious, because they don't feel safe, they don't feel included, they feel anxious, they can't learn. You can't think and learn of new ideas. You can't speak up in class if you're afraid of what somebody else is going to say, or you're afraid in your own skin. I strongly support and believe in all these activities that are being done to try to make our kids feel safe. I do not think these things make our kids weaker. I think they make our kids stronger.
Thank you. And we do have time for audience questions. Yes, please.
So we're just listening to a question about tough topics, race, religion, and sexual orientation. I didn't hear a single candidate tonight actually say any of those words or talk about race, religion, or sexual orientation. So I'd like to kind of throw it back at you again and ask you, how are you going to deal with these things if you can't even use the language and you're comparing? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I want to give everyone an opportunity to answer. So actually, Chris, if you don't mind, if we can go the opposite way, starting with Allison, who hasn't answered first yet.
Oh, sure. I appreciate that question. When I think about the time when we were going through the book challenges, I was never more proud of our peer community for coming out and supporting, of our Black and brown students for saying they need to feel represented in our books, and frankly, spending a lot of time with our school librarians through that process. I don't think I'd ever seen it through their eyes to see how do they have to pick books that represent our different populations, right? Because it's not just race or religion or sexual orientation. It's, do we have books that represent kids in wheelchairs and who have different families, and it's so many different things. So on one hand, I didn't rattle them off because there's so many different populations, it's hard to squeeze into 2 minutes, but for me, the book challenge experience was illuminating in a lot of ways because I'd never seen it through that perspective before, and I was really grateful for the opportunity to go into the libraries and see what the librarians see and see all the kids and see how we represent all those populations through books. And I think that's just one very small example, but that was a big learning experience for me.
Bruce, did you want to comment?
Well, I think I did a little bit. Yeah, we did avoid those terms, but because we're thinking of it broader, it's not just race or religion or color. It's all the differences that embody the kids. And the issue of dealing with it is applied to all of them. It's teaching the kids respect. It's teaching the kids what hurts other kids when they say something. It's teaching them how to handle anger, insecurity, all of those things. And so I think in our own way we were dealing with it, but thinking broader than just 3 nouns.
Sure. I appreciate Bruce's response and the question. I don't think anyone was shying away from using trigger words, but the question was about how to deal with tough topics in general, and I think that's what people are trying to address. Diversity, equity, and inclusion really includes anybody who is coming through our doors with unequal opportunity. And I think it's really important to know that the largest predictive factor in how well you'll do in school is your economic background. And that's one place where it's really easy to start to break down barriers. We can very easily start to ensure that those children have better access to some of the other programs. Free tutoring is something that we offer through the schools. There's a backpack program. And that's one place that we've already started some of that work.
Brendan?
Sure. So I appreciate the question as well. And I thought I touched on those topics in such a way, but I can expand on them. If I'll ask you a question though, specifically, what do you mean about race?
The question was asked, how are you going to deal with tough topics of race, religion, and sexual orientation?
Oh, I thought you had like a varying question to the topic.
No, I wanted that question to be answered because I didn't feel that it was.
Okay.
I felt that the language was avoided, and I don't think that they're trigger words. I don't know why they would have, I don't think anybody considers them trigger words. These are people, we're describing people, and to compare, to say that this is about everybody without discussing people who feel that they're at a disadvantage is unfair, and I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, as a community, as a board, as a parent, right? I feel like you have to have the ability to have that conversation, that honesty of, you have to obviously come, I'm a white man, right? So my kids are going to be the same as I am. You have to understand and let them know that people are going to be different from you. They're going to look different from you. However, at the end of the day, they're all the same. They may look different, but inside, everything functions the same. And it's bringing that levity to let your child know that, yeah, you may have differences, you may think differently, but you're made of the same stuff. And it's instilling in them that, growing up in Newtown, one of my best friends, Marcus Tracy, I don't know if that name rings a bell, but he went on to play professional soccer, very, very gifted individual. We were inseparable growing up. I did not see color in him. And speaking to that further with my experience in athletics and other experiences, you learn very quickly just that you're just the same as everyone else. You're doing the same thing, yet you come from different backgrounds. Your religion may be different, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter. You can learn from it. You can understand a different perspective and grow from it. And as far as sexual orientation, it's the same way. I don't recall when I chose that I was heterosexual. It's one of those things that just is. And you have to have the ability to have that tough conversation with your child that, yes, other people may not be the same sexual orientation that you are, and that's okay.
Thank you, Brennan. Sorry for the time.
Thanks.
Todd?
I'm glad that you asked that question. I think from my perspective, when we talk about race, when we talk about sexual orientation, one of the things is that I think the district has done a good job in being unambiguous and unequivocal about where this district stands, and it's reflected in our DEI policy. We have a policy in place since 2016 concerning gender identity and respecting it. So I think from my perspective, part of the concern is when we're talking about equity, one of my favorite lines is that talent is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. And so for me, when I think about equity and I think about where this district can go from here, That is why I focus so much on economic status and the massive divergence in outcomes that it drives. You know, for me, I grew up in the projects in Queens. You know, my experience is not like a lot of people in Newtowns. What I grew up with and what I saw and what united everyone that I grew up with was our poverty and the dysfunction that it resulted in, and the barriers that were put in our way of being able to achieve. And so when I look at Newtown and I look at where we are and I say, how do we go forward with the spirit of what these policies are supposed to be about, which is equity of opportunity? To me, I focus now on the economically disadvantaged, because that's where I think we've not done enough. That's where I think barriers are, and that's what I'm focused on trying to take down. So it's not to the exclusion of, or to reduce the importance of people who have historically been exposed to barriers to access. It's only to say that we have taken steps in the right direction with respect to those groups, but we have not done so when it comes to economic status. And that is where I'm passionate about. That is where my personal experience comes from. That's what motivates me when I wake up in the morning, and that's what I want to do something about.
Thank you, Todd. Chris, you've been very patient. Chris?
In preparing for running for the Board of Ed, and I was talking to Deb about this before everything got started, the distinction between equality and equity, like you were talking about, is really important. So to your point, I think we want to talk about our kids with rose-colored glasses. We want them to be open. We want them to see the world as being a wonderful place, but it's not. And if we want our world to be better, if we want people to stop hating, if we want all this craziness in our politics and in our country to tone down, we have to step up and do the work and face tough issues, talk about race, talk about gender, and use those words. Ignoring the problem isn't a strategy. Talking around it isn't a strategy. It's not going to change it. I think we all as parents want our kids to go out into the world and be open and honest and caring and respect other people around them. We don't want them to pick up all these bad habits, but to do that, we actually have to step up and do the work. I think the Board of Ed and the schools are trying really hard with their policies on DEI, with their policies on SEL. I think we need to keep supporting that in our teachers with training, because our kids look to our teachers for examples as much as our kids look to us. My son is just like me because he sees me every day. Our kids see our teachers probably more than they see us. So making sure that they are a good example for what it means to be inclusive, what it means to be caring, what it means to be kind, I think is the way that our schools can help address that. But I agree with you. We need to address tough problems openly, or else they're not going to change.
Before we take another question, I have a question. Looking at the clock and looking at the number of candidates, I have a suggestion that we perhaps limit answers to 1 minute so that we can get more questions in. Is everyone comfortable?
Yeah, and then we also have closing statements too. Okay, those are 2 minutes each.
Okay.
Also, so I don't want them to not have their time for the closing statement.
Should we do 30 seconds?
We'll just do 30 second statements.
Let's go to this side of the room next. Yes, please.
Oh, hi. I'm new to Newtown and East Connecticut. I have a question. What is your plan for addressing the challenges that are going to arise in this coming 2024-2025 school year surrounding the new start cutoff for the kids starting kindergarten? Some of these challenges are going to include, a lower kindergarten population because the kids who qualify are going to be in first grade, and the kids who would have qualified are not going to qualify anymore. So they're, I suspect there are going to be quite a bit of physical challenges for that, and having more staff probably than there are students to teach. Another one is for, you all talk about socioeconomic challenges of parents and diversity and all this stuff, but what about the parents who cannot afford to pay for another year of daycare? They're going to be paying for an extra year of daycare they never planned for. And also for those parents who know that their children are they're school ready and they're appropriate emotionally, just academically ready for school, but now they have to again spend a year either at home because maybe they can't afford to send them to daycare, or an extra year in a curriculum that they already learned. What is your plan to address those challenges?
Thank you for the question. Brendan, perhaps we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question because I, as a young parent, end up staring that in the face when it comes in 4 years. I think every aspect of your question is something that has to take some serious consideration for that fact. I think it's something that we as a board need to seriously consider as far as what solutions are we going to bring to the table as options for those parents that might be in that situation where I'm looking at another year of daycare and we can't afford to do that. So whether that's figuring out from a budget standpoint, is there some form of utilization in one of our buildings where we can utilize empty space and bring in a form of daycare for those particular kids where they're introduced to a learning environment that they would in kindergarten, so that they can not only be caught up but even ahead when they begin kindergarten the following year.
Thank you, Brendan. Shannon?
Yeah, thank you. So I think what we're talking about is moving the cutoff date, right, from December 31st to September 1st. And I'm going to need some help from my fellow board members, but this coming year when it goes into effect, and I see the superintendent in the back too, so he can correct me, but there is going to be a rolling admission to the preschool, so that there's going to be some sort of transition to help parents that are sort of caught in that gap. I'm going to let others who remember that policy a little bit better answer it, but there is something in place for this transition year.
And maybe in the interest of time, perhaps unless someone has a different thought or comment, we don't all need to.
I would just make one comment. It's just welcome to Newtown. I'm glad to have you. And I think
question.
it is, and I will tell you, so I have a 5-year-old who just started kindergarten in Middlegate, and he's got a December 6th birthday. So I had all kinds of agonizing about, is he now he's going to turn 6 in there? Is he too far ahead? It was a very difficult personal decision about, where he should be. So what I was going to say, but now Chris has already beat me to the punch, is the man who you should be talking to, he's in the room, he's in the house, and he is responsive. So if you've got his ear right now, you're going to get your answer. And if you don't, then send us an email, and I'll make sure you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add, and it's unlikely I'll give a better answer than Chris is about to give you, so. But yes, welcome to Newtown. My youngest child will start kindergarten next year, so this is what I'm not accustomed to, so I'm in those shoes. What I will tell you is that we do already have a process in place where every incoming kindergartner is screened at our elementary schools to make sure that they're ready and see kind of where they are in their learning journey. That process will continue. Maybe we enhance it a little bit, but it's already in place and it certainly will continue. And the statutes do leave some wiggle room for things like waivers. So if your child happens to have a birthday after that cutoff date, but otherwise they're academically ready and absent this legislation they would have started, then they can start. And I won't speak for the administrators, there's a process to handle that, but that is being thought of as part of the transition.
Thank you, Allison. Next question? Yes, please. Ma'am.
Okay, hi there. I'm going to sort of tag along with something that you had mentioned as well. I agree that action by what people have done is obviously a good representation of who they are, but I think absence and silence actually speaks more.
in terms of what's not said and what's not done. So I'm going to ask each of you to be an individual and policy off the table, what you personally bring as a candidate that's going to help us better understand independently, regardless of an email that gets sent out by the district. I'm trying to think of a term not to use. Minimizing what's happening in the world right now and how it's actually impacting individuals in our community. So much so that there is a police meeting tonight, knowing that there was an absence of what was said here. What will you bring independently? How will you be proactive to speak up when other people are silent about issues that really impact our kids?
Thank you for the question. Shannon, perhaps we could start with you and then loop our way back around.
I'm having a hard time understanding exactly what you want.
So you as an individual, not as a party member, not as a person coming to work for the kids, what do you as an individual bring to your candidacy to let us know that regardless of policies that are being written, what you'll do to be proactive for kids and teachers who are experiencing some sort of bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, whatever it might be, just as an individual?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I believe in equality, and I believe in everybody's right to be who they are. And every single decision or question that I review I will always be looking at it through the idea that everybody has the right to be who they are in whatever way that is. And that's the most important thing, what I teach my children, and it's the way I'll view any decision I make on the board.
And Bruce?
I'm kind of a little bit with Todd. I lived it. I went from white privilege in New Canaan, Connecticut, to Pawnee, Oklahoma, little town of 2,700. They still had signs on the door that said no Indians allowed. I didn't feel safe going out into a restaurant or a bar after 10 o'clock at night because I would get hassled because we were living in the black community. So I've actually lived, or what the expression is, walked in those shoes. It helps me now when I see and hear it. I have the courage to call someone out on it every time. That's a hard one. And the reality is you've got to be massaging the system from within and from the outside. So I think it's situational. I throw people out on it, and I'm ashamed to say that I've not said something at other times.
Thank you. Allison?
Thank you for the question. I think that if we don't first establish emotional safety for our kids and physical safety for our kids in our schools, then they can't learn. I think you said it earlier, Chris, that learning can't occur unless that safety exists. So I think that's paramount. I struggle with the part of your question where you said put policy aside, because I think the policy actually is important here because our policies say that we don't tolerate hate speech, we don't tolerate hate crimes. And that informs how we as a board, the administrators, different staff in the schools will address those things. And so I think the policies are important here. In terms of what I personally bring to this, I would say that I've tried to approach my life, but also the work of the board as a lifelong learner. And so I'm constantly trying to educate myself on what are the concerns of people in those marginalized groups? How are people experiencing, what are they experiencing in the world? What's going on in the world that's impacting things in our schools? I was at a program earlier tonight about hate crimes because I want to learn about that and are our policies sufficient to deal with that and are we doing enough to deal with that? So I would say that's what I personally bring and I would continue to do so.
Thank you, Allison. Chris?
I became a full-time single parent in 2017 to my two kids, when my oldest was 9. When they were in the school systems here, part of the health curriculum was drugs and families, and that was a huge impact on my kids. My kid came to me and said, I don't want to go to school, I can't handle this. I contacted the school, and they had a policy in place. The teachers and the psychologists that I talked to didn't need any justification for it. They said, we will help you. They sent the curriculum home, they sent the slides home where I could talk with my kid. one-on-one at home about this. They took them out of class in a discreet way that they didn't feel like there was something wrong with them. And I really appreciate what the school did there. And I hope that's a similar experience that other parents have dealing with tough issues like that. It's a small, minor anecdote, but that's something personal that I can share.
Thank you, Chris. Todd?
You know, I've spent my life overcoming adversity, and the way that I have paid it forward is by fighting for other people. That's what I've spent 20 years as a lawyer doing. And it started long before that. I was working with inner city kids, teaching speech and debate skills. I was working as a guardian ad litem, as a volunteer representing abused and neglected children. I have helped parents who had to fight in order to get the special services that they needed for children with learning disabilities because the district was not supporting them. I have fought to reduce the barriers to opportunity for those that are disadvantaged economically. So what I bring is a lifetime of willingness to speak the truth. And so, you know, sooner, I said when people ask, people talk to me about why am I running, somebody apolitical like me, I said, sooner or later I'm going to make everybody unhappy because I'm going to speak the truth. And I probably have already done that, but I'm going to speak the truth. So what I bring to the table is a willingness to do that.
Thank you, Todd. Brennan?
Yeah, real quick, thank you. What I bring to the board is I'm not afraid to have a difficult conversation and understand where other viewpoints are coming from. I mean, you look at what's going on in the world right now over in Israel, it's disgusting. How there's, pro-Palestine and just the language of that's getting skewed where, it's just, in my viewpoint, there's no place for that type of hatred to a single group of people. But bringing it back locally, you have to be able to have that understanding and the willingness to have difficult conversations and listen to people and understand that, not everyone might be seeing the same thing you are, but it's coming to a resolution and conclusion that, you can understand each other at the end of the day and work to move forward as, a group rather than individuals who are against one another.
Thank you. I know we have many more questions, and I apologize. We did promise to try to get everyone out on time, so I'm not sure if our candidates can stay perhaps after to answer more questions, but we did want to allow time for closing statements before 9 p.m. So, Bruce, we'll start with you. You have 2 minutes, please.
I think I want to talk about what I believe I'll bring to the Board of Education. I'm very connected to the community on campus. I've been in most organizations that you can name. I've been elected to office. I've been appointed to office. And I see part of my role is reflecting the interest and desires of the community back to the board and back to the school staff in terms of how we guide them. I'm going to be the voice of the community, not the voice of an individual party, but I think I have a pulse of the community in terms of what concerns them, what their interests are, what they're ignoring, that they shouldn't. And I think uniquely as becoming candidates here at the table, I will help bring that to the Board of Education.
Thank you, Bruce. Allison?
Yes. Thanks again to the PTAs for hosting this event, and thanks to Crystal for moderating tonight. Good job, but thanks for doing that. Hope this has been informative and helpful for people. We've all said a lot, and so I think I'll keep this brief. More important than anything we said here tonight, I just hope everyone get out and vote. Turnout in municipal elections is typically very low, so let's change that this year. Let's show the community that everyone's getting out and using their voice. I'm convinced that your votes matter in local elections more than state and federal. And I feel that very deeply in my bones because when I ran for the Legislative Council in 2019, I won by a single vote. So if that's not proof that your votes matter, I'm not sure what is. So please, make sure your voice is heard, get out and vote November 7th, and thanks again for coming out.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, thanks to the PTA and thanks everybody for staying. I lived in Atlanta for 10 years. My daughter had a Southern accent. It's long gone. So when we moved back to Connecticut, I was living in Brookfield, saving money to try to find our forever home. And when I was looking for where we wanted to move to, schools were the number one thing on my mind. When I worked with a real estate agent in where were the good schools, she brought the U.S. News World Reports, she brought the school statistics on graduation rates and SATs, and Newtown has excellent schools. We were buying a house in 2019, that's when everybody from New York was buying up anything that wasn't being burnt down. But we found a fixer-upper, and now I live in San Diego. This town has worked really hard to build up its school systems, and I really appreciate the work that's been done to get us here, and my kids get the benefit from that. It goes without saying that good schools draw in young families, and I think that's what the town is looking for, and that's why it invests so much in your schools. The role of the Board of Ed, oversee our budgets, execute policies, listen to students and parents, work with teachers and staff, and to continue to build up what we have. The Board of Ed right now has Don on there and John that bring a tremendous amount of experience teaching kids at the elementary levels. I feel like I can bring some experience for where our kids are going to end up after they leave our school systems.
Thank you, Chris. Todd?
So thank you also everyone for coming tonight, and thank you again to the candidates, and a special thanks to my current board members that I've served with. Politics aside, it really has been a pleasure to work with them. When people come inside of that room, they roll up their sleeves and they do the work and they've done it well. It's been an honor to be a part of that. Look, at the end of the day, if you want to understand where I come out on things, it's really that I do believe we can do better. And that's across the board. My commitment is to work for us to be better in our performance, to be better in closing the gap in our performance, to be better, one of this question about budgets and teachers, and I have to say this now, somebody said, it's not going to happen. The thing about me is that I don't think that way. I believe it can happen. I believe that if we do our work and we do it together and we do it honestly, that schools can be a unifier for our community, because they should be. I mean, ultimately, what my life experience has taught is that when it comes to education, lives are at stake. It matters what we do, and that should be something that unifies us together. I believe if we do our work and we do it honestly, we do it transparently, that we can make the case that the number one thing this town can invest in is education. It starts with transparency, it starts with the data, it starts with being honest about what we're doing well and what we're not doing well. And then it comes to making the decision to be honest about it, to work at it, to come up with a plan that is credible, and then to talk to our fellow community and say, this is the plan, this is the investment. I believe that brings people together, and that's what I intend to work on if I have the honor to continue serving.
Thank you, Todd. Brennan?
Thanks. So, to echo everyone, thank you all for making the effort for coming out tonight. Crystal, thank you for moderating, and the PTA for organizing this. Although a prospective member, I've learned a ton so far from being present at certain meetings and from Shannon and Todd. Really appreciate the comments made here this evening. I'm committed to this town, being a product of the town. I love my town. I see this as an opportunity to leave it better than it is currently. I always feel that if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. You will never stay the same. So with that in mind, I'm an advocate for not only my child going forward, I'm an advocate for every other student and their parents having the right to have full transparency for what's going on in the classroom and bringing common sense approaches to how are we doing what's in the best interest of our children. That's my main focus, and that's what I intend to do come the results of November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Ms. Shannon?
Thank you, Crystal, and thank you, PTA, for organizing tonight, and everybody who's here. What I love most about Newtown is its people, and clearly everybody here has a very strongly vested interest in the children and our schools, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. I've seen a lot of phenomenal discourse in my time on the board, and I think that there are lots of ways we could do better, but everyone's working very hard to make sure that we move the ball. And if you elect me, I'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the candidates and thanking everyone for coming out. Thank you to the PTA for hosting, and thank you to the candidates for being a tremendous example of public service and for collegial and productive discussion. Thank you.